Hey, this is John for MTG Nexus coming at you with kind of a state of the modern format, state of a channel, state of a whole lot of different things going on, and kind of look at the top decks since the Pro Tour MH3 and, we're kind of in this no man's land right now. So a couple things, a bit of housekeeping. First off, Wizards on their Twitch stream today, 7/23, said there will be no emergency bans in Modern or Legacy, or really any format. People expecting Scaminator to get banned in Legacy, and more importantly, Nadu in the Modern format. So basically, Wizards flipping us the bird, at least for the next month or so. Beyond that, obviously, if you've noticed anything about the channel, we've kind of moved away from playing every deck in the format. We've moved to mainly a prowess-based thing. A couple of reasons for this. One, my time to play Magic has slowly gotten less and less over the last several years, and really I didn't have the time to consistently play the top tier decks, keep up with the top tier decks, and I was just kind of doing a bad facsimile of, channels like Aspiring Spike, Young Dingo, Doomwake, people that are out there playing all the variety of decks and to a certain extent experimenting with them and doing them well. So we've shifted more towards prowess-based decks. I've purchased most of the cards for Izzet Prowess, Gruul Prowess, Boros Prowess, and then obviously Boros Burn over on the Nexus Red channel. So we're going to be taking a look at the Modern format through those lenses, but I'll still do deck guides and such as I can for decks that I may not be playing, but we may need to know. This is a piece of information by Anael Yahi, who does some very good work, statistical work over on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. I still call it Twitter. This kind of breaks down the format from 620 till 722. And as you can see, kind of the top decks: Nadu, Jeskai Control, Boros Energy, Necro, Eldrazi Turon, and then Mardu Energy, and then Ruby Storm. So basically, almost an entirely a new format since MH3 was printed, with really only Garroyo's Reanimator and Yawgmoth kind of still popping around. Prowess, total 1.8%, but this is there's 5 or 6 different varieties of prowess right now. You have Gruul prowess combo with scale up and such. You have Gruul with the energy package amped wrapped around Unstable Amulet. You have the Izzet variety, which really doesn't see much play right now. The Boros variant, which is basically Boros Burn with Slick Shot, and so on and so forth. Mono Black Scam, which is basically Necroless Necro. But we'll take a look at the main decks. But Nadu, obviously, this is the deck that dominated the Pro Tour. A lot of people expected this deck to be banned almost immediately. Wizards decided not to, and it's continued to leave around the format. So much like Eldrazi, it's kind of a card that everybody expects to get banned. But until Wizards actually does it, people were kind of hesitating to buy into the deck. Still think, we haven't seen anywhere near as much Nadu as you would expect with as dominant as the deck is. But I think people, once again, are hesitating to play it or pick it up with the RCQ season coming up and all that, with the expecting the deck to get banned. But with them not playing it, then Wizards doesn't have as much reason to ban it. So we're kind of in this catch-22 where this deck probably needs to go for the health of the format. But I digress. Jeskai Control, new energy variants. But we'll go ahead and take a look at the different deck type or examples of the deck. First up is Nadu. Now, if you've been living under a rock, basically Nadu Winged Wisdom is a 3/4. Never gives text to every creature you control. Whenever it gets targeted for the first 2 times each turn, you reveal the top card of your library. If it's land, put it into play. If it's a non-land, put it into your hand. You combine this with the card Shuko, which you can get off of your Urza Sagas or Outrider and Core. Basically target all your creatures multiple times a turn, potentially draw your entire deck, win from there. The Magic Online version usually uses Thassa's Oracle. The paper versions just either build a huge army and try to kill you, or just kind of loop Endurance, blow up your whole board with Besejus and Otawarus, and then just proceed to trounce you from there. So once you establish the loop, it is very hard to lose. The rest of the deck is finding the combo, Also, I should mention Springheart Nantuko. Basically, landfall, you get a 1/1, or if it happens to be bestowed upon something, you can pay 1 and a green to make a copy of the creature, which can get quite insane and quite out of hand. Gives you a bunch of cards to target with your Nadus. Wall of Roots and Delay to Halfling, as well as a Noble Hierarch, giving you a little bit of acceleration. And then you have, Court of Calling, Summoner's Pact kind of rounded out. Then you have the different bullet packages. Sun Cleanser, primarily here against the energy-based decks. Volatile Stormbreak, allows you to steal your opponent's Nadu or steal your opponent's whatever. Basically, it's an anti-mirror tech. And then Endurance allows you to either loop your deck or have things against Living End and such. Teferi Time Raveler allows you to do your combo without your opponent interfering with you, etc., etc. And then a couple Urza Sagas, 3-color man base, including a Dryad Arbor that you can fetch. The only other utility creature is Sylvan Safekeeper. This allows you to sacrifice lands to avoid your creatures being removed, as well as it's a backdoor way to kind of slowly combo. If you have a couple lands and you're desperate to try to combo off, this can buy you a little bit of time, get you a few draws off Nadu, and then Haywire might just be able to blow things up. And then sideboards, just a bunch of different bullets and stuff. We're not going to really dwell on that. There's a myriad of different options. Nadu basically comes in 4 flavors. You have the Bant version, which is the most played. You have the 4-color version, which is basically Simic plus Bowmasters plus possibly Shouldered, and then Splashing for Outrider and Core. And then you have the Simic version, which is just, Nadu, bunch of stuff. And then they get to play a little bit more utility things like more counter spells or more the One Ring, etc. Deck number 2 that kind of has one of the better Nadu matchups, but still isn't fantastic against Nadu, as Nadu can basically beat anything. And that is Just Got Control. Basically blue-white control, Splashing Flage, and Wrath the Skies. You have Tune the Narrative and Galvanic Discharge, along with Wrath of the Skies as your energy package. Basically, this allows you to play a cheaper, Supreme Verdict plus Supreme Verdict, the One Ring, and then Flage. This also comes in different varieties. Sometimes you'll see Solitude in these lists, sometimes you'll see Subtlety. This version is playing for Subtlety for Force of Negation as well as for Counterspell. Another card that's making a huge comeback is Smell Stare, just because there's so many 2-drops currently in the format that are so good. And then the sideboard, you have different bullets for different things. Draenith Magistrate for anybody trying to play spells from anywhere, basically but their hand, etc., etc. Consign to Memory for the Eldrazi decks, Commandeer, Celestial Purges, the additional Wrath, etc. This deck can be reasonable in the current format. It slightly goes over the top of the Boros Energy variant. Has an okay Nadu matchup depending on how you build the deck, and then you just kind of win the game with Flage, and then get new MH3 staple Invert Polarity, basically cancel or steal your opponent's non-creature spell, or steal your opponent's spell period, not even non-creature. And then Monumental Henge, basically in some ways almost the new version of Search for Azcanta, allowing you to search for a historic card. So, legendaries, enchantments, or artifacts. Now, for my mind, the deck that is probably the toughest for the prowess decks that we're playing on the channel to play against, and that is the Boros energy decks. Now, these are kind of a weird combination of the energy. Some of the energy piles you see out of the different decks. You have Amped Raptor, Unstable Amulet. You also have Fable the Mirror Breaker. But you also have this kind of cat package of God of Souls, Johnny, Nakal Pariah, and Ocelot Pride, allowing you to gain life, make a bunch of creatures with your Ocelot Prides, gain some life with God of Souls as they're coming into play, and then making all your creatures fly as you gain a bunch of energy. And then Bolt and Galvanic Discharge kind of kill your opponent's creatures. And then, Planeswalkers in the form of a Johnny flipping. Some of these decks play a lot of different things. Sometimes there's a 3-color variant out there. Some of these versions are playing Goblin Bombardment, be able to flip their Nakados a little bit easier, plus giving them another red permanent. There's really a whole lot going on. Basically, the basis of these decks are the new energy cards, the cat cards, and then Flage, just making these decks obnoxiously powerful, plus having access to Blood Moon. Sideboard, basically you have anti-energy cards, anti-Nadu cards, and then some grindy and utility cards. Nothing fancy out of these Boros decks, but they are a very good mid-range deck. They're kind of the new Jund of the format, with really the ability to play Blood Moon. And I think if Nadu does ever get banned, this will probably end up being one of the better, if just not the best deck in the format. A deck that got a lot of hype coming out of the Pro Tour, and that is Mono Black Necro. Now, this is certainly not as powerful or as obnoxious as Nadu, but it does have its own ridiculous power, and that is the form of Necro Dominance. Now, there was a Mono Black Scam deck running around before MH3, and then there was a Mono Black Cabal Coffers deck. This deck's kind of in the middle of that, and basically you're using Necro Dominance or the One Ring to refill your hand. You're using a bunch of MDFCs, Fel the Profane, which can be an expensive removal spell if you need it, Boggart Troller to run a fairly low land count, and then basically what you're trying to do is you're trying to burn your opponent out and gain a bunch of life. Ideally, you want to exchange resources on turn 1 or 2, play Necro Dominance on free, draw a bunch of cards, Soul Spike your opponent for a bunch, or wait till turn 4, play Necro Dominance, hope you have a March of Wretched Sorrows, so this gives you 8 cards, potentially gain a bunch, recoup a bunch of life loss, and then untap, slam a shoulder, draw a bunch more cards with Necro Dominance, and kind of go off to the races from there. Beyond that, obviously you have access to things like Grief to be able to pitch cast. Some of these versions are playing the Scam variant, so sometimes you'll see Malakir Rebirth in these lists. Otherwise, you see Grief being pitched and then using Phyrexian Tower to potentially turn 2 out of Necro. This deck is... I think people need to find the right balance with this deck of, going all in on Necro and using Necro as kind of this value engine, along with your 4 copies of the One Ring. I think as people get more and more practice with the deck, it'll be a little bit better, and the highs and lows won't be quite bad. Now, this deck certainly has some busted capabilities. Grief your opponent, Necro Dominance on 2, draw a bunch of cards, or, burn your opponent out with a bunch of Soul Spikes and Childreds or Bowmasters. So this deck is not... This deck has the potential to be very powerful, but I don't know that people have taken the time to learn how to play these decks correctly outside of the teams that really tested at the Pro Tour. Has put up some results, but it was a little bit overhyped coming out of the Pro Tour, but still is one of the top decks being played in the format right now. And finally, we have what happens when Mono Green Tron meets Eldrazi. Now, this deck got a lot of huge boosts. First off, big printing Ugin's Labyrinth. This is a soul land, requires you to pitch a 7-mana colorless card or greater. This one running Worldbreaker, Devourer of Destiny, All is Dust, and one of copy of Ulamog. Another card that people severely underrated was Kozilek's Command. This plus any number of mana is quite insane. Allows you to scry digging for key cards, allows you to kill opponents' or exile opponents' creatures, make a bunch of Eldrazi spawns. You can literally go into a turn with like 6 or 8 mana, have a Kozilek's Command, and that being your only card, and then basically scry like 6 deep, make 6 additional mana, untap, and the world's your oyster at that point. The rest of the deck is finding Tron or finding your soul lands, Talisman to help you play through Blood Moon and such, sowing Myco Spawn, once again, to either find your missing Eldrazi, find your missing, Eldrazi Temple, Ugin's Labyrinth, your missing Tron piece, Thought Knot Seer to disrupt your opponent, Karn for a wish board, All is Dust to wipe your opponent, Devourer of Destiny, doing double duty as both Ugin's Labyrinth fodder as well as blowing up opponent's permanents, same thing with Worldbreaker, and Ulamog just to kind of close the game out. Beyond that, the sideboard is primarily a bunch of wish targets because of Karn, and, this is one of the one of the more unique versions of the deck. A lot of these decks are playing 4 copies of Trinisphere, 4 copies of Chalice. Basically, if they're Chalice on 1 or Chalice on 2 is good against you, you're in a lot of trouble. Trinisphere can slow a lot of decks down, particularly the decks I like to play in the Prowess decks. So, you know, a lot of it just depends on which build you see, but I figured I'd find a build that wasn't, you know, more all in on the Trinisphere and Chalice versions, as you can see. And obviously the format's opened up with a lot of other decks. You have kind of an Eldrazi Stompy deck, you have Ruby Storm. The format's really evolved. It's just a question of, will Nadu get the boot or not? And if they don't boot Nadu, will the deck become overpowering to the point where they have to ban it, or can there be a fairly good balance in the modern format? That, I honestly don't know the answer. We'll have to wait and see. But unfortunately, we're kind of in a holding pattern until the BNR in mid to late August. So that's it. If you do like modern content, especially of the Prowess variety, don't forget to give us a follow, and I will certainly try to get back to doing at least occasional deck guides for decks even that we're not playing. So anyways, hope to see you for our next video.